Greetings, Internet world. Welcome to another wonderful edition of Audit Tuesday. Today, we are going to be talking about how to prep for your SOX IT audit. Okay, that's not a trivial task. I've thrown out a bunch of things on LinkedIn before this about the millions of dollars enterprises spend. So to actually talk intelligently like this, I've got people with ample experience of the audit on both sides. Craig is the customer. He's the one that someone walks in his office, we got to get the SOX audit. That's Craig. And he knows his stuff. And he knows from that part. Paul is the guy who says, man, we need someone to help us. Right? We need that adult in a room that's actually been there before. And that's what Paul does. So welcome, guys, and thanks for being on. Good deal. So, Craig, why don't you start? You just, your experience, what you've been up to, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I started doing SOX way back in 2011, which doesn't really sound like that long ago, but when you actually do the math, it's surprising how long that's been. I was doing it as a CISO, and signing off on access. It really focused a lot on domain admins at the time, and it was an interesting time because I felt like I was like the second cousin, 3 times removed from the actual people that really knew what the access should be and who should be signing off on it. So things have come a long way since then.
There you go. And Paul, why don't we get this candle lit? Why don't you talk a little about what SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley is, and more specifically, what SOX 404B, this section of IT is?
Oh, yeah. So, my experience, I started with SOX in 2005. We had a little bit of a thing called Enron, a little company that kind of went sideways. And I got pulled into doing SOX-related training because we had so many customers. I was working at a big accounting firm, national accounting firm, and all these customers were freaking out that they had heard this thing. They had to get their financial reporting in order because they didn't want to go to jail because of Sarbanes-Oxley. And so I got pulled in as the IT guy to help companies get their controls in order so they could meet the requirement. And the requirement was pretty straightforward, but the thing that caught everybody was this thing called financial reporting. And they'd say, well, IT doesn't do any financial reporting. There's nothing to it. We don't do that. And so it really gave companies a really hard time to make it happen. And I can remember those first few customers of mine, they were IPO type companies ready to go public, but they couldn't go public until they had their SOX in order because the CFO had to sign off on the SOX paperwork to get, to make sure that they could go and get public. And so all of this to help what we call those owners of the company, the stockholders, to make sure that their stock is worthy so it wouldn't go to zero like it did with Enron. And that was really kind of the whole reason for this. And I think from my perspective, I've been doing that for so long that it's just second nature. But it's truly a kind of, I tell people, it's a marathon. It is not a sprint. And if you get stuck in the weeds on 1 or 2 little things, you'll never make it. You have to really spread your resources out. It's a participation sport. Everybody has to participate. And it's not a one guy in IT that can make this happen. It's HR department, accounting, it's IT guys and security and all kinds of different folks that have to play in this headache and to keep it going in the right direction. So that's kind of my background. I've had a good time running. Back in those days, we didn't even have GRC tools. We had spreadsheets and PDFs and Word docs and JPEGs. And I had A6 paper and 8.5 by 11 paper. A6, I was in the UK and Germany and all over Italy trying to get them ready for SOX. And they hated us in America because it was an American headache. It's not a European headache. And there was no EU back then. So as individual countries were giving us grief here in the States, and the reporting guys that had to report the finances to the public companies, they were like, I don't even know how to corral those dudes in Europe because they're like, they're out of control. We're not even going to, they don't even know what the controls are. Impossible. So I fought those battles for many years, big public companies, multinationals, and truly, it takes a team. I had a team of guys work with me from all over the place, and it was I really valued having that kind of background, to that liaison, between the customer, like you, Craig, between the customer and the external auditor. Those guys, external auditors, I love them, but they're not here to help. They're just here to find things that are wrong, and they document it, and they say, okay, fix it. And they don't tell you how or why or what you can do to fix it. So that's the kind of thing I was helping them put controls in place and to get things documented big time and get it into something that can be repeatable, a repeatable process. So that's kind of my background, and I go a long ways back doing it, and it's been a lot of fun. It's all the different regulations have been hitting us left and right, but SOX is a big one.
Yeah, SOX really is the big one. I mean, Greg, you want to comment? I mean, SOX really is the big one because it basically is how the world is supposed to say you can have confidence in the numbers reported by American companies. Well, maybe it's too much American in there, on companies traded on the NYSE and the others, right? That they can have confidence. I'll let you go from there, Craig.
Yeah, I told you I was probably going to go a little bit sideways on you here.
Sure.
I actually think it's more of a hoax than a reality, personally. And the reason why I say that is because, companies spend a lot of time and effort getting ready for this, setting out all the general controls and making sure they have policies in place and all of these things. And then they get these auditors that come in. And I've spent a lot of time in biotech, so you can probably tell who I'm talking about, but I don't want to use any names. And I get the high schoolers. These are people that have never seen Active Directory, or at least they say they've never seen Active Directory. They've never seen Okta before. They've never seen anything. It's like taking your Mercedes-Benz into a Mercedes-Benz mechanic. You go to the mechanic says, I've seen 50 of these fuel filters. It's a 2-hour job. You'll get this car back in an hour and a half. You get these auditors that come in and they have no idea what they're looking at. They have no idea how they're going to, get to the point where they sign you off. You have to explain everything to them. You have to walk them through it. And I've gotten to the point, asked me this 10 years ago, I'd go along with the program. But the older I've got and the more experience I've got, I just think that it's becoming more and more of just a complete and total waste of time.
I can add to that. So I've worked with those external auditors that didn't know the difference between a database and a DBA, and databases that didn't have DBAs. It's just they don't have them.
Yeah.
So having to explain that to an auditor and how access rights work within different databases, which ones were financially relevant, which ones were not, access rights like you're talking about, those kind of things. There is no elevated access right in this application. It doesn't exist. There's users. There's no elevated. Everybody has the same access. Well, that's a problem. So, I feel your pain, and I've heard that so many times that we used to tell our CFO, if we get those questions early, we're going to tell you to think about getting a different auditor, because we do not. I'm serious. We do not.
Guys, it sounds like that's pretty good advice. Is one, you got to make sure the auditor has some intelligence on this subject,
But I just don't think that you see it. I've since 2011 have been an Okta shop. Have used Okta in many different organizations. The auditors that come in use Okta because I've seen it on their screens, and they come in and look at ours, and it's like they've never seen it before. And so, going back to UAttest, you could set up UAttest. I'm not trying to make this all about UAttest, but that's really what it's about. You can set it up so that you get immediate alerts, you get immediate auditing, you have more forensic data. And my career started in law enforcement as a forensic cop. You have more forensic data than you could actually you could get a prosecution with that kind of forensic data. And the auditors want to see screenshots. They want to see screenshots. Are you kidding? Like, do you want us to put those screenshots in a typewriter and sign them for you? Really? Like the technology and the customers have advanced years, light years beyond where these auditors are today. The auditors are not prepared to be able to come in and effectively do these audits.
Yeah, that word that you're looking for those auditors is comfortable. They have to be comfortable with what they're seeing, and that proves that they're comfortable with screenshots. And so that is a big red flag for me. And back in the day, they didn't, the comfort word, because these are associates and junior folks, and they've got to provide data to the senior folks and senior managers. And then a partner has to sign off on it. And it's that guy's name is on the, that kind of, and so if they can't get comfortable over what a company is doing, they won't sign off and they'll just move on. We'll go, you got work to do and we're not even close. So, call us in a year and let you know next time, next year at 2:00, we'll look at it again. And it's one of those that you're right. Forensic audit evidence. I'm a fraud examiner. So those kind of frauds happen all the time.
Yeah.
And company CFOs, they'd say, Paul, there's no fraud in my company. It doesn't exist. And you're like, I guarantee there's fraud in this company.
That's right. We're dealing with humans.
Yeah. And they're like, if you find any fraud, I'll take you to steak dinner, whatever. New York City, let's go. And it's just the most fun ever. But, audit evidence has really changed and automated. This whole automated portion of audit evidence creation used to be 3-5 years ago, 6 years ago, very much a new thing. If you can automate it, big. Now it's all automated. There's no, we now have external auditors that actually have platforms that we feed audit evidence into for our audit. So our audit is not in our GRC tool, it's in theirs. And we keep and maintain our audit evidence, as internal. I'm an internal auditor type of guy. So all my evidence is important to us and our company, right, that I'm supporting. And they just say, we just don't send me a request list, whatever you don't have a choice. This is what you're getting. And it really helps kind of smooth out the bumps in the audit process, because without it, audits can take months, and then rehash at the end of the year. And it's not fun. That's for sure. And it's expensive. That's the other.
Do you find that the external auditors will accept that? Because I have never seen that. Every bit of evidence that I've gathered, automated reporting, live logs or audit logs, SIM solutions, all of these things, they have screenshots.
There's a word for that. It's called trust but verify.
Yeah.
If they can't verify this particular piece of evidence, where it came from, who maintained it, who created the report. This report creation is another whole bag of tricks. It's crazy. And I had clients that had 5,000 reports that came out weekly, and all of those were financially relevant, and they all had to be verified. And you were saying change management, Garrett. Change management on a report is tedious. It's worse than an application. It's terrible. Where did this data come from? How did you connect to it? What was the protocol? How secure is the protocol? Who has access to modify this report? So all of that, that's just plain change management, but it can be, we can send it to them and they'll say, yes, we saw all your evidence. We like it. We want to see, observe. They say, I got to observe it on a screenshot and verify it. So I can say, yes, I saw it. A screenshot might actually they tick and tie like they do, those auditors, tick and tie it from a screenshot to an actual automated report. And they say, yeah, the numbers match, down to the penny. And when they see that kind of evidence and they tick and tie it, then they now have comfort over that report, whether it's automated or from whatever system. They would complain about a PDF that came out of the system that it didn't have a date and time stamp, and it didn't tell who was the user's ID that ran the report, right? Did this actual data come from the system of record, or was it from a data analytics platform that had all our data in it for every financially relevant application was in this database. Bigger than a database is a data lake. And they would say, well, that's not really the data. The data is over in this app. I'm like, hey, man, we're running this company on this data lake, and order quantities and bill of materials and inventory things, and, HR payroll data's in there, and payables, all the big numbers. Those numbers are huge.
Yeah.
And those are all what I call financially relevant accounts. And we worked directly off of the chart of accounts. That's a good place to start. What's financially relevant? And, we try to de-scope non-financially relevant sites if we have multiple sites, but applications that don't have really, the CFO would say, yeah, that thing's only, a couple $100,000 a year. We're not even worried about that. A multi-billion dollar company. So those are the kind of things. You're right, Craig. It's that trust but verify. Now, let's show, Missouri, show me state. And it's real fun. I have a great time with them. And I tell them up front, whatever you don't like and you need to get a better comfort over what you're seeing, how it ties to the actual production box, production server, whatever, we'll actually tie it out for them and let them see it. And over time, you're training them because you hopefully get them back the next year.
Yeah.
Some guys, and they're a little more senior. And then they have other guys and they'll say, yeah, go talk to your boss. I trained him last year. And it works. It works. So
Craig, I was afraid to ask, when you start your process, what foundational steps do you like to take to say, this is what I'm going to get, even before I talk to Bob or Bob Jr.? What do you like to start with?
Well, I think we mentioned this earlier, but I like to have my policies and procedures that are memorialized policies and procedures. They're not the ones that are just written for the sake of having them. They actually they're memorializing what we actually do. Have all of that stuff in order. Make sure that you can talk about what you've based it on, whether it's COVID or ISO or NIST or whatever the case may be, and have all of that, as Paul mentioned, all tied together, and be prepared. Do your walkthrough. Make sure that you're ready to have them come in and do this. And I think that the number one thing that I've learned over time is don't be afraid to manage them. For the longest time, I always felt like I needed to just sit there and shut my mouth because me as the CISO or me as the IT representative, I don't really own that relationship. That's really a finance. Finance really owns that relationship. But as I've gotten older and probably more grumpy, I'm more willing to speak up. And as a matter of fact, I had this conversation with our external auditors before, and I'm like, look, I don't own this relationship, but if I did own this relationship, I would have fired you guys. I know it's not quite that simple, but I'm just really open with them about it and saying this process isn't working. Give us somebody else. So, making sure that you're willing to step up to the plate and not only have your data lined up, but be willing to manage that relationship.
Yeah,
interesting.
That's a very good point. I don't want to throw in too much on that, but truly, I was going to say manage. You can't manage them because they're like cats. You can't herd cats.
Yeah.
But they really have a huge responsibility outside of IT, right? So these same, I hate to say it, sometimes CPA types that are trying to do IT audits, that doesn't work. But you say manage, you're trying to give them what they want at their skill level. You're not trying to pull any wool over their eyes, but the more prep that you have in advance, we used to do, like you said, walkthroughs. That used to be a dirty word, man. Nobody wanted to do a walkthrough of anything. But FYI, that's a part of the actual process from an external auditor. They have to have understanding of the processes, procedures, the activities for every significant process that makes up the SOX audit. So they have to actually walk through, what does it mean to actually do a journal entry? Do you have reversing journals? Do you have all these other little things that IT guys don't think about it, but they have to be documented. You have to have, in a walkthrough, you show evidence of that. When you're doing this is what the screenshot looks like. This is how it works. You run this report, you click this button. It's a PDF or it's a green bar. We used to have green bar back in the
Green bar
day.
paper, yeah.
Oh my God. And chain printers that made all kinds of racket. Had to go down the hall to go find your printout.
Paul,
So
can you, one of the things that I should have actually said, and you can probably add some, color to this, is um, trying to get both your internal auditors and your external auditors to use the same bits of evidence, because that can save you a lot of time and a lot of money.
yeah, we do that up front. We actually, I used to have conversations when they first thought about having an external auditor. Say, great, bring them in. I want IT and financial representation by the external, no partners. I want senior managers or managers and some associates. Bring a crowd. We're going to have lunch. We're going to have a 3-hour session in here. And then we're going to have the IT guys, the financial guys, the controller, CFO, all these different folks. And we're just going to lead the conversation, lead them to, and externals love to ask a lot of questions, right? And they want to make sure that they're going to get the right answers. And we can talk. What is this evidence? How it's going to look? What's going to happen? And that audit evidence is always different by process area, right? So you can't do all of this in 3 hours. That just doesn't work. But we used to have what we called a communications plan, a documented communications plan between the internal folks, the external folks. Who's the lead? Who's the guy in charge? The liaison, right? The guy. And if you don't like what you're getting, you need to go through the liaison, keeps it all from hitting all these different people in different departments, and say, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. You need to talk to him. I'll set up the meeting. And we have separate meetings. I used to be on those meetings all the time and say, do you have any other questions? How does this work? I'll tell them to, I'll explain it to them. And that's part of the deal, is being open to explaining, because they have to understand how it's a black box to your external auditor. They have no clue how your systems actually work. And so you have to explain it to them, and you're trying to help them get through the audit just as much as you're trying to get through the audit in advance, that prep. So I hope that makes sense. And that we used to say, why do we even need a communications plan? But it sounds silly. It really does. But man, it worked. And we'd send it to everybody. And if you ask them before you go to a meeting, have you read my communications plan? Like, no, what is that? Thanks. We'll cancel this meeting. You read it, and then we will get back to you in a week. And boy, everybody started reading that plan, and they knew everybody's email address, phone numbers. They knew every department head, IT guys, IT directors, application directors.
Yeah.
We had change management directors and boards of change management and all kind in IT. There's 20 guys that are in IT. So it was there's not one guy that's responsible for all of it. And to have that, kind of communications plan really helps up front.
So Paul, I got a quick question for you. So what are like the top, we're talking prep for the SOX audit. What are the top 3 like IT general controls, the ITGCs, that enterprises frequently overlook, or at least you'd say, let's make sure that these are in top?
All the 3 that we've talked, access controls, right? We've talked about access controls. You got to have good access control. If you don't know who your users are, what they have access to, and all of that, that's a instant fail. You just can't make it. So that's one of the big ones. And in some companies, change management is a big deal, because they actually have changes to these financially relevant apps. So the process is important to actually have good change management, governance over changes. Do they have a test and a dev, test, and production, separate environments? They, who moves code from, different, from dev into test, and who is moving it from test to production? There should be no IT guys with production access. If you have that, it's a fail. So I had to do that all over the world, telling people, sorry, you're out. There's no more access for you. You're out. And they lose their mind and get all angry. And
I need access because I might need access.
Yeah. 6 weeks later, the guy says, I'm so happy to not have access anymore to production, because now they can't blame me for what's going on in production. And you really don't want to be blamed for screw ups in production. it's big money, when that stuff goes down and not working. Those two are really big. The other stuff is related to, scoping, making sure that you have the right scope. And those aren't IT controls, but we talk, back in the day, we used to have fights about antivirus.
Yeah.
Who needs, we don't need antivirus. And then the auditor says you have to have it. It says right here, you must have antivirus on every system, every server, every database, everything. And we're like, no, it's risk. Everything's risk-based, right? So if you can actually have those conversations about risk, you'll save yourself a lot of headache. But you're trying to, if you can, de-scope some things either by financially relevant amount of money or that there's no risk there. So just de-scope it. So I really, those two, change management and logical security, right? We used to have funny conversations about physical security, right? Who has access to that chain printer down the hall? And we're like, who cares, man? It's just a report. No, it's important, but we're not going to have a security guard sitting there outside the door, signing people in and out to go get printer. Who has access to the data tapes, right? Data tapes. And I don't know if you guys are old enough to see disk packs, those giant mainframe disk packs, but those things were important. You have to secure them. Are your data tapes encrypted? Those kind of things. So physical security was, it's not really that big a deal, but those three big ones, I'd say the two big ones are just from a general controls is change management, logical security, and then sometimes they really put a lot of weight on elevated access because a lot can happen with elevated access. Restricted access needs to be put in place, those kind of things. So start with those two and then move down three to the ones that are they're there. You have to have them, but they're not quite so important to get started on. And you said policies and procedures. That one is just bare minimum. If you don't have good policies,
and I have to say selfishly, Paul, you did start off with access control, right?
it's just I had policies on policies. I had a policy that described our policies, and I had policies. It's silly, but it's true.
Yeah.
How often do you,
Craig? I'll let you go on top of what Paul said. Would you agree with this, what he was saying to start with?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a
good deal.
No-brainer.
So, Greg, I got a selfish question for you because most of it you would test customers. Well, with not the majority, but our largest percentage is in healthcare, right? And you've worked in healthcare your whole life. The work you do for SOX, right? Can you reapply that work, or do you organize your life in a way that you can organize it for both HIPAA, high trust, and the other ones that they might have?
Oh yeah, you definitely can. As a matter of fact, I actually would have put it the other way around. A lot of the work that we did for high trust really parlayed well into SOX because the auditors would come in, and as a matter of fact, when I don't remember the exact timing. It was probably pretty close. We'd got the high trust certification, and then we got our ISO certification right after. But this is when our external auditors were starting to ask about cybersecurity more. It wasn't a formal part of the audit, but they were just starting to ask questions. And I think what they were really doing is trying to understand what that looked like so that they could formalize the questions that they eventually started asking us. But we had already had everything lined up, and it was basic. It was basic blocking and tackling stuff, an acceptable use policy, an incident response policy, all of this kind of basic stuff. But as we found out, for some companies, it wasn't quite so basic. They weren't doing it.
Yeah. And see, think about that. Privacy is not a part of SOX, but it's a huge part of HIPAA, right?
Yeah.
And so you think that's not a part of this. Well, that's not a part of SOX. I get it, but we're not going to not do it. We're going to do it because of HIPAA. And we have those are federal regulations.
Yeah.
Federal regulations. All of these have teeth, right? This is orange jumpsuit type stuff, right? And they don't like hearing, the CFO does not like orange, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey,
yeah,
Paul,
that's right.
They're like, whatever you got to do, I'm just not going to wear orange ever. And it's, that's silly, sounds silly, but true. And HIPAA, it's another whole huge regulation and a lot more. This is what's crazy. Some regulations like HIPAA are prescriptive. They tell you what you've got to do.
Yep.
SOX is not that way, right? SOX is very, voluminous, vague, but it takes somebody with experience to say, these are the type of controls that we have to meet this control objective. That's why people like COBIT, right? When we're doing SOX. And COBIT is perfect because it says, we're not telling you how to do it. We're just giving you the big picture, control objectives, and you're going to have multiple controls that meet this objective.
Yep.
And it helps guide your company from an internal audit perspective and the IT guys and all the different departments. What is a real control? That conversation about a control. And we're meeting an objective. We're not meeting a regulation with one control.
Yeah.
So, Paul, I got a question for you. So, obviously, under identity, and you said start with access, access controls, right? So, given that the importance is it, and there always seems to be, at least when I started UATest, there was always this, oh my God, we got to do the SOX audit. We got to do that. Now, as Craig says, that I see the companies I'm working with are in constant audit mode and constant prep mode. So I see that. Do you see, what UATest does, the user access reviews, right, to enforce and to implement the principle-based privilege? Do you see that as something that enterprises should be doing all year long to show the auditors that they have that under control and it's not just a one-time hack? And if they don't, is that a big red flag for the auditors to start grinding you?
Well, I think it used to be in the way back, before we had a lot of automation, is there's a thing about that discuss what type of control is it? Is it actually preventive or is it something that's not preventive? It doesn't prevent a problem. It's a detective. It'll detect it, but it doesn't prevent. So those are two different kinds of controls. One's better than the other. Preventive is much better. But they'd also say, okay, how often does this control occur? What's the occurrence of this? Is it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual? And you can't do user access reviews annually and get it right. It just doesn't work. And I've had clients that say, oh yeah, we do a nice annual review. We start in like June and we're finished by November. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. The access has changed since then 80 times. Yeah. And you got new 2,000 employees and turnover of employees and change in levels of employee access and change of title of employees and on and on. So when you get to this word of continuous controls is what UATest does. And that whole continuous gives you you can report any amount of time you want, daily, hourly, weekly, whatever. And it gives you better comfort to know that you're monitoring and maintaining a good control environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It makes sense. Craig, you want to relate any of your life's experience around that?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to banging this drum again. When we first implemented it the first time, we were able to actually see live changes. And we had a situation where we had a legitimate process where we had some offshore management of some databases. And these people they would give themselves administrative access to go in and make appropriate changes based on change control. And it was after hours. And then they would remove their level of access. And, that's how the process worked. And we would see this through UATest and it all went well. But the auditors were only concerned about admin access changes during the quarterly times where we actually took the screenshots. When we tried to explain to them, there's changes that happen in between those windows for legitimate purposes, and we have the forensic data to back that up, they blue screened.
Yeah.
They were not capable of dealing with the fact that we were actually able to monitor this live. If it didn't happen at the beginning of the quarter and at the end of the quarter on those dates and times where they're expecting to see something, they did not know how to deal with it. And it just blew my mind that they couldn't comprehend this.
Yeah. They go deeper nowadays. Back in the day, it was like, that was very common. I saw a lot of it, but now it took a couple of years for them to see this Oh, so you're saying somebody actually changed something during the time. Okay, well, this was that whole concept. Early on, it was, we're going to dig a nice ditch that's 2 miles wide and 3 inches deep ditch. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Get the digger. Let's go out and do it. And now they get closer and closer to, okay, this one's only 10 feet wide and 20 feet deep. We're digging a hole to find the problems that you guys have. And that was one of the big ones. It's not the access that got granted and then properly approved and removed timely. What did he touch? What did the guy actually change?
Yeah.
Did that change actually match a change control ticket? Who reviewed the ticket to confirm that he did what he said he did? And did he actually touch data, or did he touch, it's a database, so he could do anything he wants. But what did he touch, and did he do anything else? Was it just this very specific fix, or did he do all kinds of things? Because I've had, I hate to say it, I had clients, they went offline for days, weeks, when a guy from another part of the country or around somewhere around the world went to dinner between his break. He was started on a project, went to dinner, came back after dinner, and he started doing the change that he started before dinner on the wrong bank. So two banks.
I've seen that. I've seen that too, Paul.
Two banks. I was like, how's that happen? And he goes, well, he was full, fat, and happy and wasn't paying attention. He logged into the wrong bank.
Yeah.
The first bank never got updated. It went offline early the next morning at 3 a.m. The second bank he touched went offline immediately because they didn't need that patch. And he applied this patch that was huge. It corrupted everything. And I'm talking loans. I'm talking about direct deposits, all kinds of trust services. Those are big money. And ATMs. Nobody could get their money at the ATM. Nobody could buy gasoline or burgers or whatever that day. It was horrendous. So yes, we really get to that point where it's not just a user access review of a point in time quarterly, but continuous really catches not only the access, but you got to get down to that level. Do you have database monitoring? What is he actually touching? What patch got applied? Was it the proper patch and in order, or was somebody just applying a patch from a DVD and not, a programmer doing it? It was just an application that we patched with a DVD. So there's a lot of different kinds of risk, but user access is a big one, and it can get sideways real quick.
And speaking of user access, so Craig, one of the things I was looking at, I've been coming up a lot lately in my calls is around privilege creep and what we call now privilege drift, which is basically, hey, it's not that it has argument that he's actually with the permissions almost doing a different role. Does that come up in your access review audits for SOX, and how did you address that? Sure, you can mention or any other mechanism that you did.
Yeah, it's one of these situations where you see it a lot with companies that are growing because the managers don't have a good idea on what access their people actually have.
Right.
And it's one of these situations where somewhere along the way, an employee had this level of access. Then they hired somebody else, and the new employee had that level of access because it was easier to mimic that than it was to actually go in and figure out what they needed access to. And then it just grew, and it got to the point where no one knows where that level of access started from. No one knows what is actually really needed, but it's always like, give me one of them. I've hired Dave, and Dave's the new whatever, and I need him to have the same level as Sarah has. And we don't even know if what Sarah has is right. And so the next thing you know, it's gotten, way out of control. Or what happens is, now Dave leaves and they give all these other access pieces that maybe Sarah didn't have at first, but they give it to her, and now she's got access to everything. And, it often takes somebody coming in saying, wait, why does this person have this level of access, and ask the questions that most people wouldn't. They just don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to ask these questions. They don't want the additional responsibility. They have a day job, and so they don't and they may not even be in a position to know. For example, if I went in and said, okay, I'm going to dig in and see who has access to NetSuite and Coupa. Well, who the hell am I? How do I know what level of access they should have? It's not my application. I can speak to my applications, but I don't know if that's right. And then trying to hand that off to the manager that does, it just creates this big gnash with everybody. And no one wants to, jump in feet first and try and unfarkle all this stuff.
Yeah. That's a good word, farkle. And I've seen that scope, we call it scope creep in other audits, but user access creep.
Yeah.
And I've seen it where people have, that you said, they just changing jobs or changing roles. Sally moves from one department to another.
Yeah.
She's in AP for the last 8 years, and now she's in receivables. So she's got AP and AR. Segregation of duties was another ginormous audit I used to do, and high risk, right? To the auditors, the externals, they love knowing, do we have any SOD violations ever? Have you ever had any? And if you can't answer that, it's like, we don't even, how do you tell if we've had one? You
Right.
know, it's so anyway, we've done those for years, and it's who has access to what. And we used to say that this, like I said, is a team sport, because the management of each individual within the department, supervisors, managers, users, there's got to be a control activity or control owner, a high level control activity responsible. They're responsible for the activity. If something goes wrong, they're responsible for the failure. And if they say, hey, I know that only these 4 people need access to this, and I approve it, then he feels comfortable that he's got the right user access for those 4 people, and it's not going to create a violation, a SOD violation. But I used to run tests of 90 to 150 SOD violations in, like you said, NetSuite or different tools, ERPs. Yep. In manufacturing, we had ERPs. In banking, we had core. So the core app, or your ERP suite, would have everything in it. You'd have way too much access. And IT guys I hate to say it, they usually have a lot of access.
Yeah.
And they don't need it. I mean, we found IT guys that we had one guy had his login account had not been used in 300 plus days. And he hadn't changed his password in ever since he got it. First day he got it. And we're like, okay, we're going to cut him off. And we had that as an audit finding. I was an external. We had it as an audit finding. And they're like, and the guy says, I don't know what you're talking about, Paul. I need to know who that was. He was the CIO. He goes, I need to know who had access to my system that long with no password change.
And team out there, this is great conversation, because Paul's still into horror stories, and Craig has been, managing access reviews in 3 different companies with UAttest. So I'll let you go on top of that, Craig, how you manage, access creep, access drift with UAttest to help people keep these identities in line and secure and compliant.
Yeah, well, honestly, it started, as I mentioned, back when I was at Exact Sciences, and I, as the CISO, was responsible for signing off on who had access to these different applications. And is like, as I mentioned, the third cousin 5 times removed. I didn't know who was supposed to have this level of access. So I was the last person in the organization you probably should ask. And I just thought, we've got to find a way to get this level of attestation down to the business owners of the applications and the managers, and force them to be responsible for their applications and their people. And that's how we started our journey out and got UAttest. So now it's, super simple integration with Okta or AD, whatever you have, and it pushes it out to the whatever you're managing, whether it's an application or whatever, down to the managers, and forces the managers to be responsible.
In fact, let me just show the audience right now. So this is the world. This is, Craig's life, right? He's there. He's, and I say risk manager, and that's a generic. You could be the security manager. You can be whatever. You're just the person who the enterprise looks at and says, hey, we got these framework regulations, and we have all these IDs. We need you to review. We need you to quantify the access and then come up with the document, right, Paul? The document that says this has been done, okay? And what we do is, by this time, we've been doing this 5 years. We've done 4.1 million or more attestations where we take in and we imbibe. That's the word I use. We imbibe the identity data, the roles, the user, the identity, and also the manager or the reports, however we can. And then we have a console. We have a multi-tenant SOC 2 Type 2 console that all SaaS-based, that the GRC practitioner, yourself, your MSP, or even us, we got 3 ways of deployment, can take this and go, okay, what are we doing? We're doing a SOX application audit today. Fine. Click that application, and then the grinding goes on inside our product that pulls in real time this information and then sends out an attestation campaign to the managers, either the owners of the application or the application owners. You specify. And in some cases, in the cases of some of the healthcare, a workflow, a multiple workflow of users and managers. You can do up to 4 of these. This manager has to approve this estimate and this one. Or it could be a group of managers. One of them or all of them have to approve. And in the same process, it's also able to detect segregation of duties violations, saying he's a member of this group and this group. He has this permission and this permission. All of that is being done right here. And this all goes back up to the GRC practitioner. And if it sounds like, well, Garrett, what you're saying is you're removing all the spreadsheets and screenshots. Yes. Yes. That's exactly what we're doing. We're saving people lives, and we're saving this. What really it is, we're improved accuracy and completeness, because the report's done that the manual process is 60% of errors. Okay, it creates the attestation report, can go back into the IAM and do a cleanup of your Okta, your Entra ID, etc. But relevantly for this discussion, you have an access review on file of who attested, who said it should be revoked, and that can go to your, not only to the security manager, but is filed as a report of due diligence of your enterprise. All right, guys. So Craig, any comments on this workflow, having done it many times?
Yeah, I'd say the thing that I'm not sure you mentioned that was really helpful is I call it the judo move on attestation. It allows you to actually forward it. So say I got an attestation and I'm supposed to sign off on whether the sales manager actually should have some level of access to, say, NetSuite, and I go, I'm not the right person. I can actually take that attestation.
Redelegation. Good point.
I can redelegate it to the director of sales or the director of IT and say, hey, I'm not the right person for that. I have no idea. You need to sign off on this. Eventually, you're going to find the right person.
Yeah. And Paul, been in the battles for as long as you've had. Any thoughts on this? I mean, the automation of this process.
Yeah, the automation is really helpful, and it's required. You got to have it, because you can't do an audit, this kind of a user access review, UAR. You can't do them quick enough anymore.
Right.
And to have something like this that spreads the work across everybody in the enterprise, and gets you good detailed information, timestamps on when somebody approved something, when access was removed or added. So you get all this great detail when, Sally just got Dave's access added to her, and it shows time and date stamp when that happened. And you can say, okay, well, we know that was a problem. And the auditor wants to know, how long did Sally have the wrong access? You can run that report. You can have a beautiful report. She had it for 13 minutes on Friday afternoon, and we took her access away. So that's zero risk. It's just really helpful to have that automated piece. The other piece that I think people miss sometimes, we call it siloed apps, right? Apps that are not connected to anything, right? Or it's some, old beater application that doesn't even have there's no reporting that comes out of it. You can't do a user access review. You have to use screenshots. And sometimes it's near impossible to get that data. So what you have to do is actually use a tool. Garrett can attest to this. It's crazy how you make it work and get data and tie that data to another source of record for the user ID.
Paul, what we do is we do go to siloed. We take that information from the siloed app, and then what we do is we map it to the managers in your Okta, Entra, your Ping, your Jump Cloud, your AD, and then we send out the attestation campaign to those managers. And every single customer we have uses that feature because no one has everything integrated into their IAM. That's just not reality, especially for the regulated industries of healthcare, finance, insurance, our top markets.
Yeah. And it's really painful. The other painful piece is saying, okay, this access is improper. Somebody says, okay, we've sent it off to the manager. The manager says, okay, this access rights is, who has to change the access in that siloed application? Well, it's one guy or, somebody, and that's painful sometimes. And it gets slow and tedious and gets missed. And I hate to say it, screwed up, or wrong access gets granted or not removed properly. So yeah, I think the other piece you haven't mentioned yet, Garrett, is this, I call it a risk rating. We
have an identity trust score system. It's an AI-based, U.S. patented as of last year, system where it goes into your IAM, into this, and does three key things among others. One, it runs a model that says why you have access to this when no one else in similar groups has access to that. The second is it puts in your SOD, your segregation of duties score. Okay. The third one, which no one thought of, which I get on my soapbox and rant, is when's the last time anyone looked at this account? I don't care if it's a real account, a user account, or an NHI. When's the last time anyone's reviewed it? And we keep track of when you reviewed an account. And that is actually putting human in the loop into identity trust. Yeah. We feed that all together and come up with an identity trust score. And I'm really big on that because I think that should be used in systems that are starting to use CAEP, the Continuous Authorization Event Protocol, which I think would solve a lot of hacking. So if anyone wants to talk about that,
especially if you have a policy that says you review access controls or accounts on a whatever, at least annually. Well, now you have a way to measure it. I'm sure the auditors would blue screen if you actually mentioned that you could really do this.
They would listen. All right, let's wrap this up. Greg, any last thoughts you have for given that people's day jobs are to do these audits? What's your thoughts? Any last thoughts? And then we'll go to you, Paul.
It's total automation. Like it puts attestation in the hands of the people that should really be doing it.
Yeah, that's what we do at UTest. Take it away, Paul. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a big point, is that you want to this needs to be a repeatable process.
Yeah.
Right. If it's not repeatable, you're going to fail and keep failing. Right. And failing is no fun for anybody. And this repeatable process means that you guys are going to the company is going to get through a successful audit, because I've seen the unsuccessful ones many times. And those can be very painful for what I call, your senior executives that own stock in the company. They don't want to lose money on their shares they own. But not only that, those can be detrimental to, we call it a going concern. I've had clients that a going concern is a CPA type conversation about, you might not be in business next year. Nobody wants to hear that. So yes, these repeatable processes keep your company in working order and smooth running and making it work. So I think that repeatable process, but when you have an automated tool that does it continuously, like you're saying, Garrett, that's big time plus, big time.
Oh, and Paul, tell people how to get a hold of you.
Sure. My website is Compunetics with a hyphen there, compunetics.com. And it's a very simple website. I'm not a flashy kind of guy, but you can look on there and send me a message through the website. My office number is 214-659-1184. I answer it all the time. I get calls from all levels of guys, C-suite, board members, whatever, call anytime. I love to hash it out and just help people, really. Trying to be helpful with the experience that I have. And I can't fix everything, but I can at least get you going in the right direction.
Great stuff. Yeah, I'm Garrick Rajak. You can just reach me. Easiest is just type CEO@uattest.com. Ping me on LinkedIn as well. I'm always there, always like this, and love to talk to things about things like CAEP, privilege creep, access reviews, SOX, etc. All right, guys, that was fantastic. Thanks a lot, Craig. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thank you, guys. Have a great afternoon. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.